Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh, everybody. How are you? Happy Saturday. This is me, your host, Preacher Master, host of the SOS, the Shout Out Show. Brothers and sisters, I'm coming to you very happy in a great place. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be on the program live today. So I'm pre recording my show, and Sister Satana, inshallah, will be able to run the back for the comments. The reason I will not be on the show today is I will be hosting something called Share a Story. And members of the W.D. Muhammad community are going to be sharing stories about our leader, Imam W.D. Muhammad. As much as the story about Imam W.D. Muhammad is a fascinating story and a fascinating journey, today I would like to take a little bit of time to talk about his community. And the interesting thing about Imam W.D. Muhammad's community is that the community comes from the Black community. In essence, this is the original interfaith for Black Muslims, Black Christians, Black atheists, whereby you had a meshing or a congealing of Black religion that really spoke to the needs of the people, that spoke to social justice, that laid a bedrock, brothers and sisters, for understanding legal impetus for so many things that are going on. The idea of family, what a Black family looked like, what a Black business looked like, what a Black church looked like, what a Black mosque looked like. This comes from that space. And I thought it'd be really, really important and interesting to talk about that today on our platform. Now, while I'm not live, I am available. And I hope that I'm relevant for some of the things I'm going to talk about today. I want to give a shout out to Sister Tana for piloting this program, this ship. I'm not here today. But I also want to share with you, the viewer, that I'm happy that you came on this platform, because really it's you that also helps pilot this platform. The subject matter, the presentation, the professionalism, the concepts, the humor, all of that is a reflection of the community that I come from. And let's be really, really honest and open up this discussion. This is not just the Black Muslim community. This is the Black community, period. The Black arts community, the Black political community, the Black business community, and of course, the Black religious community. Nowhere in the history of the United States has Black religion, if you want to be honest, affected so many things locally and at the same time affected things internationally. Religion around the world, Christianity, things were introduced to people with leverage, if you will. Islam was a religion that had to evolve. The Black Muslim, if you will, was a religion that evolved into a religion and then it blossomed. The whole aspect of Christianity, brothers and sisters, I don't argue with folks. I say, when people came over on the boats, the arguments about Christianity, Islam, no. This was a spiritual nurturing that had to be had, a spiritual development ideology and ideation that had to be had to make sure that the souls of Black folks that came to these shores, through everything they went through, remained steadfast, remained logical, remained loyal to the idea that even the oppression around them could not separate them from the Lord. Very, very powerful, powerful situation. And to believe that it's been brought here. Think about it, brothers and sisters. I heard at a masjid, I heard at a khutbah yesterday, the African American is a miracle. Statistically, economically, physically, the African American is a miracle. The presence, not just the presence, but the excellence, and not just striving, but winning in a society that's not particularly built for them. And here we have a community that's not talked about. I'll be honest with my community. We're not talked about enough. We don't beat our chest when we do things. We just say, alhamdulillah, keep it moving. We don't do press releases, brothers and sisters, because that's not the job of a worker. My good brother, big brother Reginald Kitchen always said, Allah always rewards the work. He always blesses the work of a righteous worker. And this is a community of righteous workers. Today's program, Share a Story about Imam W.D. Muhammad. It will be white righteous workers talking about another righteous worker. So what I like to do, brothers and sisters, is we're going to warm it up, and I'm going to be right back. We're going to start it just like we started. We'll be right back with the Shout Out Show. I'm Preacher Moss. And we're back. When I talk about Imam W.D. Muhammad, I like to make it really clear to people, extremely clear, that unlike the program that happened tonight, you have a lot of people that spend a lot of time with Imam W.D. Muhammad. They were advised by him, they were taught by him, they were nurtured by him. I came late to the game, brothers and sisters, I'm not going to lie. But I was able to pick up a lot of breadcrumbs about what he did. And I always tell the story that originally when I made the commitment to be Muslim. I make no bones about it. I had intended to join the Nation of Islam. Let's just be honest. The NOI is where I was. I was young, black. We had Public Enemy. We had 5% Nation of Islam. I mean, in the youth space, those things were prevalent. And my big brother directed me to Masjid Muhammad, which used to be Muhammad's Mosque number 4 in the days of the nation. They actually had one there, and then they moved over to Kenilworth Avenue. I think it was Kenilworth Avenue off of 295 in Washington, D.C. And so I went to take my Shahada. My brother sent me there. And when I got there, it was pretty apparent that I wasn't at an NOI mosque. And the interesting thing was, out of my ignorance, I didn't understand, brothers and sisters, I didn't understand and hadn't done any investigation about the W.D. Muhammad community. My brother Reginald, who used to be Brother Reginald 13X, sent me there, and he said, I needed you to begin this journey. He said, I sent you because you need to understand this journey. And what I didn't understand, even more so, though I had intended to join the Nation of Islam, was the fact that the data was not out there. And it's hard to make a decision when you don't have all the data. And when I got there, I was given a history lesson. I can't remember the Imam there, but I know the Imam immediately after was Imam Yusuf Salim. And I saw an active community in the middle of a community on New Jersey Avenue, which was consequently renamed Islamic Way, 4th Street Islamic Way. I began to see the idea of a community working. People didn't take breaks, if you will, with their deen. And they were not left to argue the merits of their deen. And I thought this was interesting. It was people who were believers, who were thoroughly entrenched in the idea that their religious identity had so much to do with meritocracy. You work in the way that you believe. I thought this was amazing. And soon enough, of course, I took my Shahada, and of course, the rest is history. But is it really history? Because the people they talked about was ironically Imam W.D. Muhammad. And doing the due diligence later on, I came to appreciate the man, not for everything he had done. I appreciate him for that. I appreciate him from taking the NOI from the first to the second, because the second was going to be relevant. As much as I love that NOI, the second had to happen. Even the Nation of Islam brothers recognized that had to happen. You had to have an outgrowth in terms of the black church that identified with some of these other issues. The amazing thing, though, and much the same with the NOI, I was amazed, brothers and sisters, by what those religious bodies produced. Imam W.D. Muhammad, through his leadership, produced a heck of a community. And I'm not talking about career people, doctors, lawyers, judges. We have all of that. Actors, singers, musicians, we have all of that. Scholars, we have all of that. But he produced a particular type of DNA that while you were 100% Muslim, you could be 100% black. That your identity, when it crossed, it didn't trip one another. Does that make sense? And when I say it didn't trip one another, meaning that it lent to each sphere. So while I could be Sunni Muslim, I could still talk to my NOI brothers, and I could talk to my my brothers from overseas, and I could talk to people who were not even, you know, Muslim, and still be able to bring what he called sober language. I love that quote. He was able to bring sober language and to produce a people who had sober language. Now, this idea ran across me as I was sitting in Juma yesterday, and I looked to my left and I looked behind me. There weren't a lot of people there. Masjid Sultan Muhammad. And it's easy to say this place is not filled up. What's going on? The Imam was giving a great khutbah. Shout out to Imam. He was giving a great khutbah. The sisters in the back. And though it wasn't filled with a lot of people, let me say this. You can feel the energy. You can feel the energy. You can feel the love. There's something of a spiritual, esoteric that just fills the room. Even when I was Christian, when you had that type of thing, it filled the room. It was genuine. And it came from a place that we all had what was understood as, a shared struggle. And sometimes these days, I don't really understand if people aren't really are tied into the idea that people have shared struggles. That we are able, brothers and sisters, across the board to be able to look at a situation from whatever walk of Islam we want to claim and go, that is our problem. That's my brother, that's my sister. So before I go on, I want to give a shout out. I know we can't do the shout, but I'm going to shout out my regular shout out family. First of all, before we get to that, I want to give a shout out, of course, to Sister Ika and her family. They are recovering from a plethora of injuries, illnesses, if you will, over in Indonesia, Depok. We hope you're doing well. Sister Nancy Mustafa, I hope that you're recovering as well. We'll give a shout out to Miss Eleanor. Miss Eleanor just got home from the hospital, so we will definitely keep all of them in our du'as. Also, a shout out for my mom. She's been a little bit under the weather. And shout out for Brother Kendrick. We want to make sure that you're doing all right. And, of course, Sister Lorraine Kitchen. We'll make sure everything about all of y'all doing all right. And then my shout out family. You know what I'm talking about. I want to make sure we're shouting out Sister Ree, who's going back for week number 2 of her business, Soulful Creations. We hope that she's selling fried chicken, baked chicken, and grilled chicken, brothers and sisters. A lot of chickens are missing in the state of Texas. They're all going to be where she are. 239 Greens Road, Houston, Texas. She's going to be there from 11 to 7. Make sure you check it out. Also, I want to give a shout out to my brother, black man. That's Johnny Lee Thomas. JT, my main man, who has been so graciously hosting his big brother here in the city of Milwaukee. Make sure I get around where I need to be. And just being a good brother, man. And a shout out to my nephews, Ray, Justin Jordan, and the Thomas clan. Shout out to Queen Yolanda as well. Queen Eunice and Queen Maisie and Queen Maisie and Queen... I forgot the last queen. Okay, that's it. But shout out to everybody. Shout out to my mom as well. I want to give a shout out to Brother Eric Carter, our newest member. I want to give a shout out to Brother Altaf Rashid, our main man, our Canadian ambassador. I want to give a shout out to Sister Christy Santiago. I want to give a shout out to Sister Salim, and she's coming on the show. I just want to give a shout out to everybody. And a shout out, of course, brothers and sisters, to Sister Sultana, who's working this thing as best she can. And I want to make sure, brothers and sisters, we give Sister Sultana some love, because she's doing a lot of work all over the place, not just with the shout out show, all over the place. Okay. So let me get back to what we were talking about. I didn't have a lot of interactions directly with Imam W.D. Muhammad. Thus, the share a story about Imam W.D. Muhammad, my story is going to be extremely short. He gave a thumbs up for the Allah Made Me Funny tour back in the day. And in a very gentle way, reminded me that it had community impetus. That in some regards, going out and talking about Islam, people are going to ask you where you come from. And he said, you can't stutter. You can't stutter. You can't hiccup. You got to tell people this is where I'm from. And he said, you have to be willing to be judged. He said, you're in this community, he said, but you've been You've been. I have been. I have been. I don't know what's the word. I guess the word is sheltered. I've been sheltered. I hadn't had to do anything in the WD Muhammad community up to a lot made me funny. And then when I stepped out, it was interesting because I learned some things. And what I learned was this love of the community. And what I also learned is when I got in the media that people really didn't know the story of the WD Muhammad community. The bridging from the first to the second, normally, brothers and sisters, in historical studies, historical imperatives, that bridging normally takes hundreds of years to evolve a strategy, to put in place certain things, governmental structure, to make sure. I mean, normally it involves armies and things like that. And in one fell swoop, this group of people, and I'm going to say this for the nation, I'm going to say this for the WD Muhammad community, to have the mental and intellectual capacity to go from one to the other, from one to the other, is nothing short of a miracle. I earlier referred to the fact that us just being here as a miracle, but imagine the philosophical and religious theological shift that you're making at a point where not too long ago people didn't even think folks could think. They didn't think black people could think, let alone have theological impetus, theological expression, and questions about God coming from a connection that's called Islam. You know, some of the best shows that I've ever had have always been for my community. They have. And it's always been somewhat of a homecoming, if you will, coming back home because to go out in different communities, uh, the Imam used to say that, you're going to war. You're going to make people ask, but you're going to war. He said, they're not used to seeing you in those places. He said, they're not used to seeing imams on their membars. He said, but with that comedy, you could do it. And I took it seriously. And I really, in my heart of hearts, said, even today, with some of the larger Muslim organizations, I'm always pushing and promoting people from our community, our communities, even the NOI, I promote them too. And the reason I said that is because this mosaic, this puzzle is missing so many pieces, and those pieces are us. So every time I tell a laugh, it was always for the WD Muhammad community. It wasn't like I got you. But when I told a joke, it was for our community, but more importantly, it reflected something from our community. You see, the humor that I have for however long I've been doing this game has come from the kindness, the willingness, and the generosity of this particular community. So you can go to church, you can go to Catholic church, and you know, outside of some areas, some offerings, they really haven't evolved. Most, Catholic churches, Baptist churches from early 1900s up to the 60s, they really hadn't had any type of opinion on the equality of black folks, on the issues of fairness and justice to black folks. They didn't have that. Let's be honest. What they had was a ragtag type of identification of the problem without getting their hands dirty. And so when you stop and think about our community, outside of the NOI, we're very entrenched people. When I say very entrenched people, means that we don't have to have a food giveaway at a local church or school. We know who's hungry. We know who's hungry. We know who's unemployed. We know who's got out of jail. We know who's sick. We know who needs a job. We know who's not doing well in school. We know those things. And the uniqueness of this community is that we are uniquely equipped to deal with those type of things. You see, the fundamental shift that's happened over the last couple of years with WD Muhammad community is that we gotten older. And much the same in corporate structure. People rate our young stars. I want to make sure that people know that we produce Muslims that are talented, brothers and sisters, are talented. But just like the Hollywood structure, Hollywood tries to take the most talented and do what they will with them. That's probably another subject. That's another subject. But the community, the people that you will see tonight on Share Story regarding Imam W.D, you're going to listen to them talk about him, but you're going to hear that he worked through them. And working through them allowed them to avail themselves to the needs of their independent communities. This doesn't happen by itself. I mean, this is an event that's being sponsored by the W.D. Muhammad Islamic Center in Greensboro. That in and of itself, they're raising money to pay off the mortgage, but that in and of itself shows you something that hasn't happened in a long time, that we're rebuilding mosques. Imam W.D. Muhammad Masjid in Houston, Texas, another example of building mosques, building futures. We're not a dead community. I've always said this, we need to kind of constrict ourselves to what our needs are, because sometimes we extend ourselves. But isn't that the generosity of being Muslim? And it should be that if you extend yourselves, people should appreciate it and not exploit it. So the people that you'll see tonight, they'll look like me, they'll sound like me, but everybody's going to have their own different approach, their relationship to Imam W.D. Muhammad. But what I really, really enjoy is that independently, Imam W.D. Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, promoted the idea that we were different communities, different regions, different locales, with different issues and different solutions. And take a snapshot. Take a snapshot of this thing. It goes from 6 to 9 p.m., I believe. While I'll be hosting, I think I'm wanting to make sure that everybody knows that our community, amongst other things, the beauty, the generosity, the religiosity, the just the pure will to get things done, we're still growing. We are still growing. And while people need to be on the front line sometimes and have their pictures taken and press releases and things like that, Allah never wastes the work of a righteous worker. This is a generation that's produced workers after workers after workers after workers. NOI, same way. We are a generation of Black theology children who have learned the most important aspects of hard work and due diligence in our labor. Not how we get paid for our labor. This is important. In our labor, not paid labor. In our spiritual labor for being here on this earth. The axiom of leaving our spaces better than when we arrived. That's also something I have to say about our community. You know, we enter into places and we leave, they're better. They are fundamentally better. Now, I want to wrap up and I want to make sure that I don't leave out certain things. Because I can leave things out. I do it all the time. But I think it's important to talk about this community in this way as I close. The community has a certain branded content. And that branded content is, in the minds of many people, counterfactual. Like you hear about it, but if you don't really see it, it didn't happen. And we have to be very, very wary of that we are in a cancel society. And, you know, we have cancel culture in Islam. You know, there are people who want to lead this community just like other communities who may or may not be equipped. The point of the matter is, for you to be a leader, I have to want to be led. And we have a group of individuals that are amazing people who have, for lack of a better word, instilled in communities that you have to do for self at the religious, communal level, but you got to do for self at your own independent level, your own life level. Thus, not needing to be up under anybody, but at the same time, understand your commitment and your value to community issues. So, when we see that coming through, brothers and sisters, I think it's important that we don't overlook it. We appreciate it, and we're going to have discussions about it. You know, when the Imam passed away from Allah, brought him home, alhamdulillah, and again, may Allah be pleased with him. You know, the absence, the absence of a worker is always, the absence of a worker is always difficult. The absence of a worker is hard because you have to substitute not their work, but their commitment and their loyalty. So we began to say, we begin to say, you missed that person because you missed the attributes, but you missed their contributions. So then let it not be lost today at the share story that the people speaking don't make contributions. And shout out to the whole committee that put this whole thing together. But I just want to make sure everybody is coming out of this thing and going into this thing with love. Yes, for definitely for Imam W.D. Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, but also love for the community and each other. All right. So let me get to our folks today, brothers and sisters. We want to give a shout out to our sponsors, BeFinancialIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinancialIndependent.com. You can call 1-888-496-6845. Again, that's 1-888-496-6845. And you can hopefully you give a call and you can talk to the owner, the minority business rep, Ms. Maxine B. Kate Esquire. Check her out. What she's trying to break the slavery of debt, brothers and sisters. That's important. And as well, if you're interested in a quality Islamic graduate level education, check out Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Again, that's Bayan Islamic Graduate School. Make sure you peek your head in. Check out the website. It has some incredible speakers, a lot of visiting professors that were amazing. You want to check that out. And the programs, if you're interested in Islamic studies, Islamic education, Islamic leadership, or the MDiv program with a specialty focus on Muslim chaplaincy, check them out. The Muslim chaplaincy program is the only one in the country, so I would definitely recommend it. So my brothers and sisters, you guys have been amazing. I don't have a whole lot left to say. I think that you guys have done what you need to do. And for lack of a better word, I just want you guys to have a blessed day. I'm Preacher Mons. This is the SOS. Take care. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.